Welcome. This is a feature story podcast covering a passionate state representative and relentless advocate for the homeless in Keene, New Hampshire.
My name is Jody Newell, and I'm a state representative for Cheshire 4, which is I like to call it my little slice of heaven over here in Keene.
Through the voices of those who know her best, her son Corrado, her colleague Renee Montiel, and herself, we learn about the life, the heart, and the dedication of Jody Newell. Jody has been a state representative in Keene, New Hampshire for a little less than a year. She opens up about her most valuable contribution, bringing her lived experience of losing her fiancé to substance use disorder and overdose into her advocacy work.
Speaking from the place of someone who's experienced the loss of someone who went through substance use disorder and overdosed. And so that's kind of an experience that I bring with me, raising 2 children, widowed by the overdose crisis, essentially. And so I try to bring that perspective, but it's really not just that one. I think in going through the experience of, after that experience, the fallout, there was the going through it with him. And then after he was gone.
Jody Newell's journey is one marked by unimaginable loss of someone so important to her.
He's both of my children's father. One of our kids was a year old, and the other one was born 2.5 weeks later. So yeah, my world, honestly, at that point. This is coming up on 15 years ago. On Christmas Eve, it'll be 15 years. I like to say, I don't like to say it, but I say my children went through the grieving process with me, because you're a single mom, and as much help as I had wonderful family support and things like that, but you're going through that. You can't just step aside and say, I'm going to take a little while and process this. No, I went through it with my kids.
Jody's oldest son, who is 16, thinks very highly of her.
My name is Corrado Ambler, and I'm the son of Jody.
Corrado's admiration for his mother is unmistakable. He sees her not just as a loving mother, but also as a role model.
Yeah, she cares not just for everyone, but kind of everything.
His admiration shines through as he describes how Jody creates a safe environment for him, emphasizing her commitment to his well-being.
She makes sure that when I'm in an environment, she makes sure that it's in a good space. For instance, she could have chose to buy a house in maybe a more run down part of the city that just costed less, but she decided to spend more money on this because it was a safer neighborhood. So she makes sure to surround me in a safe environment.
Corrado highlights Jody's tireless work ethic, acknowledging the sacrifices she makes for her family and her community.
She works more than a lot, too much almost. She doesn't really have a break.
On a scale of 1 to 10, Corrado rates his mom a perfect 10.
She's raising 2 kids as a single mother and working all that time. I think that's really, really impressive. So I see her as she's my role model.
Jody's story takes us through the heartbreak of losing her fiancé to the opioid epidemic. She describes the initial shock and the changing nature of the crisis.
I'll say probably 7 or 8 years later, I'm kind of out of that fog of grief and looking back and seeing more and more. At some points it was every other week that there was a funeral or a wake or whatever it was happening. Literally every other week, I could list off 10% of my graduating class that is just poof, gone. And that's just my graduating class, It just got so bad.
Driven by her grief and a growing frustration with the lack of action, Jody dove into activism, seeking answers and solutions to the worsening crisis.
It felt why, if we all acknowledge this, if we've understood that there's a problem for, at this point, 6, 7, 8 years, if we all understand that this is a problem, then how have we not been able to get a handle on it?
She also sheds light on the personal struggles and legal complexities faced by individuals and her fiancé who battle or have battled substance use disorders.
As you're getting getting to a point where your whole family is rallying behind you to support you in your recovery and, help you, do whatever you can. At the same time, you have a 15-year mandatory minimum hanging over your head. Now imagine you have a 1-year-old. Imagine you have a 1-year-old and while you're trying to get well, you are faced with the prospect of only seeing that child through glass for the next 15 years until they're basically ready to graduate high school. Just basic human nature. That's not a recipe for success.
Reflecting on the challenges faced by those impacted by substance use disorder, Jody highlights the importance of understanding and compassion.
People have very good intentions and are trying to do the right thing.
Jody shares that her journey as a homeless advocate started when she was just a kid. Her grandmother founded a transitional housing shelter, which she continues to volunteer and work at today, alongside her father, who is the executive director. I've linked the shelter's website below. It's called Friends of the Homeless of the South Shore, and they own 2 different shelter locations, one in Weymouth, Massachusetts, and the other in Norwell, Mass. And her efforts do not go unnoticed by those around her. Renee Montiel is a New Hampshire representative for Cheshire 15, who connected with and befriended Jody. She talks about first meeting Jody, highlighting her warm and vibrant personality and what they share in common.
She was warm, friendly, and just vivacious, like the kind of person that you're just drawn to instantly. And Jody, like myself, is also a single mom. And we've experienced a great range of many different things that we bring to all the work that we do within our communities and within the state. And one of the things that I admire most about Jody is that she works tirelessly for the community.
Renee admires Jody's tireless dedication to the community, recognizing her as someone who not only shows up, but puts in the energy.
She shows up to everything with her energy that she has. She's dedicated. She's dedicated to the community. She's dedicated to learning. She's dedicated to making people's lives better.
Renee also reflects on the way Jody channels her grief into activism, turning painful loss into a force for positive change.
It's hard because I lost my brother a few years ago to the very same thing. And she's able to take that, like her grief, and like activate it, where I just still just stand there with like a heavy heart, like I can't do much because I'm still hurting too much. And she's really turned hers into activism.
Jody emphasizes the critical need for a compassionate and understanding approach to those experiencing homelessness and substance use disorders.
When people are in that situation, they are most likely going through the worst moment of their life.
She chose to share a memorable experience she had with a man in Keene.
One day I'm just sitting out there and I just went out and was hanging out with a guy who we had gone out and delivered supplies to and stuff with Keene Mutual Aid. And then later on I went back and just hung out for a while. I mean, it was like an hour and a half or something. He's showing me all of his drawings. Very good artist. He showed me all of his drawings and all this stuff. And, I would guess he's probably somewhere around 50, 55, something like that. And I believe it was somewhere around 12 years that he had told me that he had been living out in the woods essentially for 12 years. And so here's somebody who you don't expect, you just expect them to go further into the woods, right? But I'm gonna come hang out. We're gonna look at your pictures and we're gonna, shoot the breeze for a little while and talk. And the police stopped by while we were there and offered support. And you think, well, this is one of those people who's just not going to accept support, But you know what? I ended up going into the Keene Serenity Center like a month, 2 later. And I was just there to meet with, somebody there. And I saw this guy there. I was like, hey, how you doing? He says, yeah, I got a place. They moved me into a place. And I'm just sitting here like this guy who for 12 years was living out in the woods. For 12 years, he was unhoused. He was perfectly content with living out the rest of his life that way. And clearly through our conversation, he felt like nobody gave a shit. Excuse my language. He felt like nobody cared.
Jody's impactful encounters with the homeless community in Keene shed light on the meaningful impact of human connection and compassion. Her experience with a man who had been living outdoors for over a decade reveals the resilience and overlooked stories within the homeless population. A simple conversation and shared moments of genuine connection sparked a significant change in this individual's life. Let this heartfelt exchange remind us that a moment of compassion can transform someone's entire outlook. Jody Newell's life is one of resilience, compassion, and a persistent commitment to advocating for the homeless. Her journey, shaped by personal loss and unwavering dedication, continues to inspire change in her community and beyond. Jody was kind enough to share a collection of photos of her and her fiancé, as well as him and their son Corrado, that can be viewed below. I've also included links to homeless shelters in the Keene area and ways the community can be involved. Thank you.